Hi, I'm Joe Henderson along with Bruce Mayer, your host for Treasure Hunter. Today we're at an old site in Sumter County that dates back to around 1754. And Bruce, this site was once the home of John and Edward Rutledge, and these people were pretty famous South Carolinians. You'd like to tell us something about them?
Yeah, Joe, they really were. And of course, John Rutledge was the governor of South Carolina during the American Revolution. A real important person, and he had a brother, Edward Rutledge, who became one of the signers, one of the four signers from South Carolina of the Declaration of Independence. Interesting story about Edward is he traveled to Philadelphia in 1774 as a South Carolina delegate to the Continental Congress, and he went to Philadelphia with the express purpose of talking some of the other guys in the Congress out of signing the Declaration of Independence. It was sort of a scary thing, the prospect of us breaking away from Great Britain. But as it turns out, 2 years later, as a member of the Second Continental Congress, he himself had become convinced that the 13 colonies should become independent. And so I guess the rest is history. He did sign the Declaration of Independence along with Middleton and Hayward and Lynch from South Carolina.
And Bruce, on a site like this, it's always possible that you might find some personal memento of these two gentlemen, so that's always an exciting thing to think about.
Right, Joe, and things related to the household, and not to mention some of the possible camp activity from the Revolutionary War and possibly the Civil War.
So this should be a real exciting hunt. So let's get the machine turned on and see what we can find.
All right, let's do it.
We're right behind Shaw Air Force Base, and a lot of people just don't realize how historical this area really is. We have Stateburg just a little way down the road here. And of course, everybody knows Stateburg is a prominent part of South Carolina history. And then a few miles down the road from that is the old town of Manchester. So there was a lot of activity that went on around here. I've got a good signal right here. I believe it's iron, but we're going to dig it, see what it might be. If I'm a betting man, I think that this is a nail. There's a piece of brick came out. We're near the old house site. There's a lot of brick down here when the old house burned down. The brick was just scattered all over the place. And I can see what this is. It's just little pieces of tin foil that are in here. No matter where you go on an old site or new site or wherever, there's a lot of tin foil around. Everybody knows that these things were used for old cigarette packs and gum wrappers, and there's going to be those types of things anywhere you hunt. But that doesn't discourage us, because the site we're on here is going to be really outstanding, I think. I'm sure you can hear the airplanes in the distance. We're only about a mile northwest of Shaw Air Force Base, so we're going to have that problem all day today. Now here is a real nice signal. I don't know if this is very deep or if it's near the surface. What we'll do is just take off a little bit and see if it's the surface. No. Sounds like it's about 3 inches down. It's a little deeper than that. We're down about 4 inches and it's still in the ground. It's in this hard packed dirt too. Got it out. It's right here in the dirt. Well, it's nothing to get excited about, but it's something that you're going to have to dig anytime you get a signal on, because this is a shotgun shell, but it's exact size and composition and brass as a little button would be. So you're going to have to dig these and just put them in the trash at the end of the day, so you won't dig them up again if you're ever out on site. That was exciting, because I thought something that deep would be something from the colonial period. I know there's got to be some good signals around here somewhere. That sounds real good right here. Well, we got it out of the hole. Here it is. See if we can find it here. Oh, there it is. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's a real nice little buckle. It's a brass buckle. We call that a square D buckle because when you hold it, it looks just like a letter D, and it has an iron tongue to it. Now, these buckles date back to the Revolutionary period, and this one, you can see the file marks on it. And it's just a beautiful little buckle. I love these little buckles. They run from this size up to large size, maybe like 3 by 3. This one's about 3/4 by 1 inch. It's just a beautiful little buckle, and it looks like this little tongue eventually, after it's cleaned a little bit, that tongue will swing free too. Well, that was really a nice find. Those buckles were used from about the early 1700s to the early 1800s, and they're always fun to find. Well, I'm having fairly good luck, but right now let's toss it back over to Bruce and see what he's coming up with.
Well, I hope Joe's doing okay on the other side of the field over there. I've really come up with some pretty interesting things over here. This is something right here that just really tickled me when I found it. It's apparently, it's an old chain, obviously, but apparently it was a tag worn by cows out here. They numbered their cows to keep up with them. And this is a big, heavy brass tag, and it's got a number 40 stamped on both sides of it. And it's a really nice, big, substantial piece, and real interesting. That really excites you when you find something like this. And look at this. This is a buckle, the type of buckle actually that was used back during the colonial period, possibly early 1800s. But these were used for strap buckles and any number of purposes. One of them was that they were actually used for belt buckles as well as cross belt buckles during the Revolution. This is interesting because I found these types of buckles made out of brass before, but this is the first iron buckle of this style that I found, so that is really interesting there. And this piece is apparently, I think it must be part of a stirrup. It's the biggest stirrup I've seen. The foot pad here is one of the biggest I've seen. It's got a little curl here, maybe some straps held it or something, but it could possibly have been some type of a tool or something like that. But right now we're kind of leaning toward a stirrup, but we're open for suggestions here. You never know. A lot of the things that you find are like that. You just don't know. And this is a horseshoe. You find a number of these on these old sites, and this one has the calkins here on the end. These are called calkins. And this horseshoe, I'm guessing, would date to about the mid-1800s period. And things like this are interesting because it reminds you of the fact that we ride around our automobiles every day and we take it for granted. And people back in these days, they relied on these horses. They had to use them for transportation. The horses did all the work, did the plowing and pulled wagons. And also people back in those days could actually be hung, I think, for stealing horses. So it just kind of shows you how important horses were back then. And we need to sometimes not take these little conveniences that we have these days so for granted that we so often tend to do. Let's see what else we can find. All those pieces like that, the old iron that you find in the ground in areas like this, are all important to our history. So, take these things and learn how to preserve them, and they really are something that you want to hang on to and pass on. We have got a pretty good signal right here. Let's see what this might be. It has a real clean sound to the signal, so let's kind of dig carefully around it. You always want to be very careful when you're when you're digging a signal so that you won't hit whatever it is down there. So I'm trying to come in from behind it and around it, and let's see if we can pull a little of this dirt up. Well, here it is right here. It's a piece of brass, and I'll tell you what it is. I don't know if you can tell on camera that well. It is a piece of brass, but there was a fire out here. The old plantation house burned years ago, and this is no doubt a piece from that. It's a piece of melted brass. So we'll stick that in our pocket, and once again cover our hole up real well, and move on down the hill here. Well, this is kind of actually a pretty good signal, but it's interesting to hear how it's making kind of a double sound. The machine is making kind of a double beep, and what that can indicate sometimes is one of two things. It could be an old nail laying on the end, an old nail laying on the ground, laying horizontally in the ground. Or occasionally I found buttons or old coins that were sitting vertically in the ground, and that can cause your machine to give you kind of a double sound. So all we can do is go in here and see what we do have, and let's go over it again with the machine. All right, now we've got it up in the dirt. And yeah, real interesting. It's just a piece of brass, but it's a real very old piece of brass. It's got two holes in it on the end where screws or nails went through it, and it's interesting because I can look at it and you can tell that it's been hand filed, it's been handmade. And so even though I don't know exactly what this is, I believe it had to do with a locking mechanism on an old lock in one of the old houses or something. But the interesting thing is that it is handmade, and so it is very old. Let's cover this hole up carefully. And that's good. That's the kind of things you like to see coming up out of the ground, because it does remind you you're in a real good old spot. This is not a bad signal here. Let's see if we can dig this out real quickly. I think I'm gonna have to, the roots are kind of tough here. I'm gonna have to kind of cut around or cut through some of the roots. And let's see if we still have our signal in here. It is still in there. Get my hand to pull a little dirt out. Still in the hole, and it's kind of a faint signal. Sometimes that'll indicate that it's something small down deep, which that's what you like to find sometimes with these deeper signals. On the other hand, it could be iron. You never know. Push a little more of this dirt around. Still in the hole. Sometimes the signals can kind of run from you, and I think I've got it now. See what the problem was. It is a piece of iron down deep, and I'm gonna see if I can pull it out real quickly here. Here we go. Yeah. Oh yeah. This is real nice. This is a part of a staple. You know, I'm going to say at first that that's possibly a part of a stirrup, but I'm not sure. I've got to think about that. It's got a little spike into it here. You know, it could have been a stirrup, possibly. Would have been about this wide. But also it resembles a butt plate that might have been on a Civil War, Revolutionary War period rifle, but not entirely sure about that. Well, let's go check back in with Joe and see what he's coming up with.
I was just showing Alan, one of our cameramen, one of our crew members here, a little thing I just found. It's brass. It's a little small, about a 2.5-inch long rabbit, and he's back feet are broken off and his front feet are broken off. And we were just discussing what this may have been. It could have been almost anything, but if I was a betting man, I'd bet that this probably came off some kind of hunting trophy or vase or something like that. It's really neat. Nice little heavy piece. And I showed him this nice button I found. This button's about the size of a quarter. It's just plain. The shank's missing on the back, and it's got a little wreath that goes around the inside edges. This probably dates back to the early 1800s. It doesn't have a manufacturer or maker's mark on the back, so that usually dates it to probably around 1795 to probably 1815, somewhere in that time period. And I've been having fun. That's the only two good things I've found since we tossed it over to Bruce. But I'm up here near the house, and I've got a good signal right here, but I really hate to dig this because it's right in a fire ant bed, and I've had quite a bit of experience with these guys, and this is one of the reasons I wear gloves. And I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna dig real quick, and if I don't find something in about 20 seconds, I'm out of here because I don't like to mess these things. Wait a second, we got it out right here. Oh, look at this. Full of ants too. Let me knock some of that dirt off and get the ants off. I have no idea what this is. It's a big, huge brass piece. It looks like it's not machine made. It's got a hole here, and it's got threads inside here, and it's bent. And I think this was maybe part of an elaborate candlestick or candelabra, something like that. It's definitely from the colonial period, just the way it's made. Now I'm gonna shove this dirt back in. I'm telling you, those ants are going crazy. Make sure I don't have one on my digger. Those things, you think you got them off of you, and you walk away, and all of a sudden, wham! And they hurt. Here's another good signal. This is a big object too. It might be the other part of that candlestick, or whatever it was. I may have it out and I may not. That's still down in the hole. We've gone down about 6 inches and it's still in there, so it's something pretty big. Here it is. I believe this is a big piece of iron. Oh, look at this. I have no idea what this is. Let's see if I can knock some of the dirt off to get an idea. Huh. I believe this was a start of a horseshoe. It was never finished. That's exactly what it is. You can see where it was started, where they were making the groove for the nails, and apparently it was being held this way. The blacksmith was holding it by this part here, and apparently he never got around to finishing it, because that's almost has to be what it is. Look here, this part was finished. Something must have gone wrong and he decided it wasn't good enough, so he just tossed it away. But that seems strange that he would toss it away, because they kept the iron and stuff. They didn't throw anything away. It may have been put back to finish later, and they just never got around to finishing it. I love to find unusual things like that, because that'll tell you more about a site than most anything else will. Well, I'm having a lot of fun. I found a few good things, but right now, let's check in with Bruce and see what he's come up with.
Well, we got another, actually real strong signal here, which we'll see what happens, but it sounds like it's kind of shallow. Sometimes the shallow pieces will be shotgun shells or pieces of foil or something like that, but you never know. Let's see. Up's in the grass, up here in the grass. And dropped out. Oh, here it is. Now that's not bad at all. This is a beautiful button, and apparently it's an early 1800s period button. You can see on the back, hopefully on the camera a little bit, that it has a back mark, a company back mark on it, or it may just say plated or triple gilt or something like that. But it's generally believed that the back marks were put on the buttons beginning in the early 1800s, although I think a few have been found that dated to the late 1700s. So Joe, actually that's about the best thing that I've come up with today.
Yeah, Bruce, that's a really good find, and just looking at it, I'm having a little difficulty, but it looks like it's a nice little eagle with some kind of wording on it. Looks like triple gilt or something like that. That's a good find.
Right, they are. Anytime you find an old button like that from the early 1800s or any other period in the past, it's always exciting.
Well, Bruce, that's about all the time we have for our hunt portion of the show today, but we'll look around the area and see if we can come up with anything else, and we'll take a look at these artifacts and some other things that we found later on in the show. Bruce, we really had a good day today, but as usual, we made most of the better finds after the camera was turned off.
Yeah, that usually happens. I think you can concentrate a little more or something like that. But anyway, we came up with a couple of real interesting pieces here. Evidently there were tags that were used to mark cattle and keep track of them, and they have these huge brass tags. One of them's number 15 and one's numbered 40. And by the way the chains look, they were probably maybe 20s or 30s or 40s, something like that. Not real old this century, but nevertheless real interesting.
Yeah, real nice find, and of course we know horses are around too, because I came up with this real nice stirrup. It's about the biggest one I've ever seen, so somebody must have had a large foot to fit into this one.
I think so. That's a large one.
And this is middle 1800s, so anytime you find something like this, it's a lot of fun.
Oh, it is. Real
and Bruce found something else that comes from a horse too. That's this horse rosette with the horseshoe. It's a two-piece construction, and again, that's a real nice find too. And we got a little handful of buttons here, and
some of the old flat colonial period buttons, early buttons, early 1800s.
And we got a few buckles, and here's a mini ball from the Civil War. We know that there was some Civil War action took place out there, but we didn't know that anything happened right there on Sans Souci. So
it could have been a campsite or something, just like we'd said earlier. Although we didn't really find enough to conclusively bear that out. But
no, we didn't find too many military items at all. And here's another nice find too. Here's a George III halfpenny.
And then here's a barber dime, a silver dime right here. You find those occasionally on old sites. And then a few of the old lantern pieces here, a few of the old square D buckles here, and here's a piece of a key in a little small lock that was used, could have been on any little small chest or anything like that.
And Bruce, we went down Charleston recently, and I came up with this real pretty gold thimble, the only gold thimble I've ever found.
That's a nice one too, the first one I've seen.
Well, Bruce, that's about all the time we have for our show today, but before we go, I'm sure you'd like to thank the people who made the show possible.
We really do, Joe. We appreciate Dr. Wendell Levi for his allowing us to hunt out in the area, and it's a beautiful area and a lot of history out there, and we really had a good day.
We sure did. Well, we hope you enjoyed the show as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Until next time, this is Joe Henderson.
And I'm Bruce Mayer.
For Treasure Hunter, wishing you good hunting.
You, all, y'all. Plural, not singular, replaces northern you guys. Thanks for watching, y'all.
Great performance.